It was a Friday with pale skies and a slight wind when everything happened, and it was precisely on that day, so ordinary for the world out there, that Elisa's life took a turn that not even her young intuition could have predicted. At 16, Elisa already had the exhaustion in her eyes of someone who learned too early not to expect anything from anyone. He lived with his mother, Donna Nadia, in a small apartment behind a mechanic's workshop. The mother, always in a hurry, said that the girl needed to grow up quickly, that no one made a living being too sensitive. Elisa listened to that in silence, as she listened to everything, because since she was little, she learned that silence not only protected, but prevented words from coming out too crooked to be fixed later. That morning, Donna Nadia woke Elisa with an impatient sigh. She said she had found a great job for her, that a busy widower needed someone to take care of his daughter, a quiet, disabled girl. "Just like you," she said, with a half-smile that Elisa couldn't interpret. Elisa hesitated, asked the man's name, where his house was, but her mother looked away and simply said, "You'll like it. He's rich. He'll treat you well." And that was it. With her backpack on her back and her heart beating out of rhythm, Elisa got into the black car that arrived at 9:10 in the morning with a polite driver and a briefcase in the back seat. The drive was long and silent, and the only sound that filled the car was the soft brushing of the air vent. The gate to the house opened slowly, as if it felt the weight of welcoming someone who shouldn't be there. The mansion was large, but it wasn't pretty. It had the appearance of something that was made to impress, but that, over time, was consumed by silence and solitude. The impeccably manicured garden contrasted with the house's dull facade, where the windows were always closed and the glass opaque. When the car stopped, Elisa got out with timid steps, holding the strap of her backpack as if it could protect her from everything she didn't yet know. The man was at the door, tall, with grey hair and an impeccable dress shirt. His name was Roberto. He extended his hand with a brief smile and said, "Welcome, Elisa. I hope you like it here." And that was it. She saw no children. She heard no laughter, no small footsteps, no scattered toys. The hallway he led her through was long, silent, decorated with paintings of cold landscapes and antique furniture. "This is your room. You can rest a little. We can talk more calmly in the afternoon," he said, opening a light-colored door with a made bed, heavy curtains, and a built-in closet. Elisa nodded silently, went in, and when the door closed, she felt her heart race. She sat on the edge of the bed, trying to understand what exactly was happening. That house was too big for so little life. And at that moment, even without proof, Elisa had the uncomfortable feeling that something there was a lie. A lie so well told that it seemed true. Her action against the glass. The gate to the house opened slowly, as if it felt the weight of welcoming someone who shouldn't be there. The mansion was big, but it wasn't pretty. It had that appearance of something that was made to impress, but that, over time, was being consumed by silence and solitude. The impeccably manicured garden contrasted with the house's dull facade, where the windows were always closed and the glass opaque. When the car stopped, Elisa got out with timid steps, holding the strap of her backpack as if it could protect her from everything she didn't yet know. The man was at the door, tall, with grey hair and an impeccable dress shirt. His name was Roberto. He extended his hand with a brief smile and said, "Welcome, Elisa. I hope you like it here." And that was it. She saw no children. She heard no laughter, no small footsteps, no scattered toys. The hallway he led her through was long, silent, decorated with paintings of cold landscapes and antique furniture. "This is your room. You can rest a little. We can talk more calmly in the afternoon," he said, opening a light door with a made bed, heavy curtains, and a built-in closet. Elisa nodded silently, went in, And when the door closed, she felt her heart race. She sat on the edge of the bed, trying to understand what exactly was happening. That house was too big for so little life. And at that moment, even without proof, Elisa had the uncomfortable feeling that something there was a lie so well told that it seemed true. Time passed slowly in that house. Elisa looked at the ceiling, listened to the ticking of the wall clock in the hallway, and felt each minute weigh more than the last. Around 3 in the afternoon, she heard a light knock on the door. It was Roberto. He came in with a tray of tea and cookies, placed them on the desk, and sat down in the armchair next to the bed, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You haven't met my daughter yet, have you?" he said, looking at the cup of tea as if pretending to find courage in a banal gesture. Elisa shook her head, almost not wanting to ask, but curiosity got the better of her. "Is she at school?" Roberto gave a half smile, but didn't answer right away. "She doesn't live here anymore. It's been a while." Elisa frowned, confused. "So, who did I come to take care of?" The silence that followed was the strangest answer she had ever received in her life. Roberto got up, went to the window and pulled the curtain aside, without looking directly at her. "Actually, Elisa, I need company." The way he said it made her spine shiver. His tone was too soft for such a dry revelation. "I'm not an easy man, nor am I used to having people around, but sometimes silence weighs too much. The house becomes a kind of punishment. Do you understand what that means?" Elisa didn't answer. She sat there, her gaze fixed on the steaming cup. She did understand. She understood more than she wanted to admit. But something about that confession seemed wrong, an emptiness that wasn't hers, but that somehow tried to stick to her skin as if it could be filled with her presence. That night, Elisa took a long time to fall asleep. Every sound in the house seemed louder than it should have been: the creaking of wood, the wind passing through invisible cracks, the distant echo of footsteps that she didn't know were real. When she finally fell asleep, she had confusing dreams, with endless hallways, doors that wouldn't open, and a voice calling her name from afar, repeatedly, like a whispered prayer. She woke up before sunrise, with her face damp with sweat and the feeling that something was out of place. The room was dark, but not completely. The hallway light, left on, invaded through the cracks in the door, casting shadows that danced silently across the walls. She got up slowly, without turning on anything, guiding herself by touch, as if she didn't want the house to realize she was awake. She left the room. The hallway was empty. The same smell of cleaning products and old wood hung in the air, thick and almost suffocating. She walked slowly to the living room, running her fingers along the walls, feeling each texture as if searching for some hidden truth there. The house seemed bigger at night, more alive, or maybe just more sincere in its silence. In the main room, she found Roberto sitting on the sofa, with his back to her, looking at the unlit fireplace. He didn't turn around when he noticed her presence. He just said, in a tone too calm for that hour, "You don't sleep well either, do you?" Elisa hesitated before answering. "This house doesn't sleep," she said. And the sentence came out so true that they both fell silent, as if she had touched on something he was trying to hide, even from himself. Roberto sighed deeply, still with his back to her. She was like that too. She would stay up at dawn, walking around the house. She said her dreams lived in dark corners. Elisa felt a chill. She didn't know if he was talking about his daughter or some other woman, and she was afraid to ask. She stood there, as if any movement could awaken something dangerous in that man. But what bothered her most wasn't what he was saying, it was the way he said it, with a tenderness disconnected from time, as if he were talking to a ghost that still lived there. "Your daughter, did she die?" she asked quietly. Roberto took a while to answer. She existed. That's all I can say without getting lost again. The answer was too strange to ignore, but Elisa was already beginning to understand that in that house, almost nothing would be said with all the words. Roberto stood up, straightened his shirt, and walked slowly to the window. The sky was already lightening outside, but it still had leaden tones. I brought you because I saw in your eyes a silence similar to mine. He turned to look at her for the first time since he started talking. But now I see that your silence is not empty, it is strength. Elisa felt the ground shake inside her. For a moment, she wanted to believe in the kindness that was in that sentence. But something told her that behind that tenderness, there was a dangerous desire to transform her strength into a crutch for a man who never learned to heal his own pain. Elisa went back into her room without another word. She closed the door carefully and leaned against it, feeling the cool wood against her back. Her heart was beating fast, as if she sensed that what had started as a job was actually something else, something confusing, delicate, and somehow threatening. She sat up in bed and stared at the room as if it were the first time she had seen it. Everything seemed different now. The heavy curtains seemed to hide secrets, and the silence in the house was no longer just the absence of sound. It was a muffled scream, an ancient lament that she had somehow been called to hear. He took his cell phone out of his backpack. There was no signal, no messages from Mom, no missed calls. It was as if she had been left there in a place that didn't exist on the map. For the first time, he felt real fear, a quiet fear that doesn't scream, but eats away at you from within. He thought about running away, but he didn't know where to. She thought about confronting Roberto, but something in her told her she shouldn't do that now. So he sat down at his desk, opened the notebook he always carried with him, and began to write. Simple, sincere words, as if she were writing a letter to herself. If I'm not here tomorrow, may God remember what I felt that day. May He see me, even if no one else does. The day had fully dawned when Elisa finally went to bed. Didn't sleep. He just stood there, eyes open, listening to the sounds of the house slowly waking up, though none of them came from anyone but Roberto. There were no servants, visitors, neighbors, or even outside noise. It was as if that mansion was planted outside the world, in a space where time passed only inside people. Around 9 o'clock, he knocked gently on the door and called her to breakfast. Elisa hesitated, but opened it. There's fresh bread and hot milk. I know it's not much, but I thought it might be a start. She nodded and followed him, not out of trust, but because she needed to better understand the terrain she was treading on. The table was set with care, silverware lined up, cloth napkins, a small flower in the center. There was an effort there, she noticed, but a strange effort, like someone trying to recreate a painting of memories that no longer exist. While they ate, Roberto asked simple questions. What she liked to listen to, if she read, if she had any siblings. Elisa answered little, measuredly, and it was in this contained silence that it broke for the first time. She was like you, quiet, observant, but in the end, even her silence went away. I lost her, not to death, as everyone thinks, but to the world. Elisa looked up. So, is she still alive? Roberto didn't answer right away. He just ran his hand over his face, as if trying to erase a memory that was too old. Alive? Maybe, but not here, not with me, and that destroys me every day. Elisa finished her coffee in silence, but inside a storm was brewing. Something about that revelation seemed to have opened a crack in what had previously been just distrust. Roberto didn't lie with words. He lied with omissions, with the spaces he left blank in sentences. It was as if he was retelling his pain every day, but always with the same pieces missing. And now, here she was, sitting at the table where a daughter had once sat, sleeping in a room that might have belonged to someone who still existed somewhere, but who he refused to let go. What did he expect from her? That it occupied that space like a living shadow, an emotional substitute. Elisa felt that, more than company, Roberto wanted to recreate something, and she didn't know if she had the strength to stop him without losing herself in the process. She spent the rest of the morning wandering through the rooms of the house as if searching for a buried story. Each room was a capsule of silence, decorated with memories no one else shared. He found a bookshelf with hardcover books, all neatly lined up, and a picture frame facing down. He turned it over slowly. She was a curly-haired girl, maybe your age, sitting at the piano. The frame had old dust on it, and the glass was cracked in one corner. Elisa stared at that image for minutes, feeling as if that face was trying to tell her something. He returned to his room with the portrait in his hands, placed it on the desk, and for the first time since he arrived, he felt something different inside him. It wasn't fear nor anger, it was compassion, not by man, but for the girl who existed in the absence, and for herself, for still having faith that she could leave there with her soul intact. Early in the afternoon, Elisa made a decision. She needed to find a way to get out of there, but with dignity, without running away like a fugitive, without hiding like she was in the wrong. She wanted to leave like someone who chooses to leave, like someone who finally understands that she has no obligation to heal anyone at the expense of herself. With the portrait in her hands, she went to the room where she knew Roberto usually stayed during the quietest hours of the day. He was there, sitting in his armchair, his eyes downcast and a mug of coffee in his hands. When she entered, he looked up, surprised. "I found this in the office," she said, placing the framed picture on the coffee table. "It's your daughter, isn't it?" Roberto nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "It was," he whispered, as if he still didn't know how to handle the verb tense. Elisa sat on the couch across from him, her hands clasped in her lap, her voice firm but sweet. "I can't be her, and I won't try to be." Roberto took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a few seconds, then slowly opened them. "I know," he replied, "but you filled the house in a way I didn't know was still possible." She looked at him with compassion, but not pity. "This house needs healing, not replacements, and so do you." Roberto lowered his head, defeated. "Are you leaving?" Elisa took a deep breath. "Not today, but yes, I will." And in that instant, without shouting, without conflict, just with clear words and a clean heart, Elisa began to leave that story, not as a victim, but as someone who had learned to say no without having to shout. That afternoon, Elisa went up to her room and wrote a letter. It wasn't for Roberto, nor for her mother, who had not given any sign of life until then. It was for herself. He wrote about the value of silence, not as a prison, but as protection. About the faith that sustained her soul in moments when she seemed forgotten by the world. And he also wrote about choice, that word so small but so sacred for those who spent their entire lives being led by the will of others. Carefully folding the paper, he put the letter inside his backpack, along with the few belongings he still carried. Before leaving, she knelt beside the bed and said a silent prayer with her eyes closed and her heart open. He asked for no deliverance, no miracles, just courage. Courage to continue being whole, even in pieces. When she got out, Roberto was at the door. The sky was orange, tinted by the warm light of the sunset. He didn't say anything, just opened the gate with a gentle gesture, and for a moment, his eyes seemed less heavy. Elisa crossed the sidewalk with firm steps, without looking back. The ride-hailing car parked a few meters away, and she got in without hesitation. As the vehicle drove away, she felt a lump in her throat, not of regret, but of liberation. That house would be left behind, as would everything in it that existed and cried out for help. In the back seat, Elisa looked out the window at the sky and smiled, even though her eyes were filled with tears, because on that day, when nothing seemed to make sense, she discovered the value of silence, and even more, she discovered the power of being heard by God even when the whole world chooses to remain silent.